Maybe a blasphemous statement for anyone over 30, but as a young 19-year-old man, playing any game created before 1990 isn't necessarily on the top of my to-do list. Semi recently, the Metal Gear collection went on sale for about $40 on Steam, and I decided, why not play all the Metal Gear games? Metal Gear, to me, sits in a cultural pocket between something like Fortnite and a game like Risk of Rain. What I mean by this is that if you ask a guy my age or younger if they've heard of or played Fortnite, our guy probably has a few squad dubs or at least knows most of the cultural events around Fortnite. If you ask that same guy about Risk of Rain, odds are he has zero clue what you're talking about. Point is, I think Metal Gear is in between the two extremes, where our guy may have played him in Smash or something like that, or may have even done the Fortnite event for his skin, but he knows he's the Metal Gear guy, but nothing deeper than that. My frame of reference for the Metal Gear series is about the same. I mean, I've seen a couple Donkey videos, and I have a basic understanding of the plot of the Metal Gear Solid series and the more modern installments, but when it comes to the original series, I fall back in line with the casual view. All I knew is that it was a top-down stealth game for the NES and a bit from a game theory video about Snake smoking weed in Metal Gear Solid 5. So I'm walking into OG Metal Gear pretty much blind, and in many ways I was surprised with the game. And comparing it with games of its time, the ability to tell a real story that you can buy into while still having a real game behind it is impressive. Comparing it to other classics for the NES such as Mega Man, Mario, Contra, Zelda, Castlevania, and various others, there's an obvious level of separation. Metroid and Zelda strike similar gameplay notes, but Metal Gear holds a far more interesting story than those games do. Those classic NES titles have a much lighter tone to them and are more rooted in sci-fi and fantasy, respectively, while Metal Gear pretty much has the plot of an action film. And the story is by far the most impressive aspect about the game. Metal Gear 1's plot is surprisingly rich and well-paced for the amount of content that you could afford to put in an NES game. Codec calls, which become a staple of how Metal Gear tells its story throughout all of its titles, tells you enough to point you in a direction and gives you a strong enough foundation to grasp the situation that you and Snake are in. You begin the game by getting a call from Big Boss, the leader of Foxhound, and you're told that you've been sent in after another member of Foxhound who has been captured trying to destroy the Metal Gear. Your job is to finish the mission and find him along the way. Good enough intro and keeps you in the dark enough to be curious. Then you start playing the game. D-pad movement, you have a punch button and a shoot button. All items are the equip slot and equipped via the menu. Same thing with equipping different weapons. Cool, it's an NES game, and I fully understand the technological limitations of the time and have really no issues with the overall control scheme and how you pilot Snake. The first 30 minutes of the game try to hammer home the stealth aspect of the game. Set pieces like the elevator shift change tell you to take advantage of your openings, and everything is pretty straightforward. Until you see a door. The doors in this game became my least favorite part after an hour. Every door has a corresponding keycard for them. This is easy when you only have 3 of them and have been exploring the building for 45 minutes and can remember what goes where. By about keycard 6, you won't remember shit, especially if you haven't been playing the game in one sitting. I played through it in 4 sessions on my Twitch over the course of roughly 2 weeks. The last 2 play sessions were some of the most frustrated I've been by doors in a video game. Metal Gear is split up into 3 buildings. Buildings 1 and 2 have 5 floors each and about 80 doors total across the 2. They don't split up the keycards, so you can be in building 2 but need keycard 1 for a door, or keycard 7, which you don't have yet. What happens is that anytime you get to a door, you end up flipping through all your keycards for 45 seconds, and a quarter of the time you don't even have the right one. My save by the end had about 3.5 hours of playtime, not counting the deaths which don't get added. I believe that 15 of those minutes were spent trying doors. That is 7% of my playtime. This shit sucks. And you may think to yourself that surely most doors are just with the newest keycard you got. This is true for the next 2 doors you have to go through, and then you're back to trying to bink the door. I'm not a game designer, but surely for the doors you can see, which are only the doors on the top of the screen, you could tack a sprite number on them to at least tell me something. You may think that this isn't as big as a deal as I make it seem, but this kills your ability to stealth anything unless you remember every door in your head. Going into the menu stops the game, but you have to walk into the door to open it, which takes game ticks. When you have to do this 3 times, the guard that wasn't looking at you is probably looking at you now. Now you're on alert and you have to deal with some pretty inconsistent combat. I won't complain too much about this game's combat because the game's old, it's an NES game and it works in a certain way and that can't really be helped. But what I will complain about is one variant of enemy, the jetpack troopers. These fuckers can't be killed unless they follow you indoors and make every roof section unable to stealth. We first meet them on the first roof. Roof 1 is like a regular floor until you cross a bridge and run into these fuckers. They put 3 of them on the screen and they fly around in a pattern that covers everything including the entrance to the frame, so this means you can't even use your only real stealth tool, the box. The box is the one thing that makes this a fun stealth game, and it's probably the coolest mechanic in any NES game on the whole platform. But the jetpack fucks don't give a shit. Any section with these guys makes you run through and try to dodge their spray of bullets while you can't fire back, and ends up teaching you that spamming rations is the best way to get through everything in this game. Once you evade them and get inside on any of the roof sections, they clown card the door, and you have to take minimum half of your HP just to play the game. What this does to you is make you look for any way to max out your rations and not really give much of a shit about stealth in some sections. After the Jetpack Mafia kills you once or twice, you never think about the game in the same way ever again. On that same roof is one of the first boss fights in the game. They announce themselves to be boss fights and there's a pretty obvious solution to win. Take out the most recent weapon you got and try to find the safe spot. This is just old game shit and I accept that. What I don't accept is the 2 blind men. The 2 blind men, who are cyborgs apparently, patrol a connection room to progress to the last section of the game. Great. Combination of a door room and a boss fight. The issue is, the game doesn't tell you it's a boss fight until you've had to go through there 7 times and probably died to them just as many. They stand in line with 2 doors on each side of the room, and once you cross into their path, which are blocked off by crates, they sprint into you and do probably 1/5 of your HP. So if you don't know what keycards open what, you will die until you know and you remember every single door. This section is only passable by receiving a call in a hostage room and then calling the person back in the next room and then receiving the last weapon in the game. Only then can you kill them and get the keycard you need to leave building 2. The issue with this room is it violates everything the game teaches you beforehand. And I can imagine that in 1987, this shit took somebody 2 hours to get through. Every other boss fight is announced, and if it isn't, it's extremely clear that it's a boss fight, like the tank or the helicopter. The game systems make this room one of the most infuriating things about the game, and it's for one room like 3 hours into the game. Once you get done with this section, the game is pretty much smooth sailing through some pitfall rooms and some creative backtracking. Finally, you get to the Metal Gear. Killing the Metal Gear is one half of the climax of the game. The doctor, who you rescued earlier, worked on Metal Gear and tells you the order to blow up his legs. The issue is that he told you this shit an hour and a half ago and the code is 16 bombs long. Either you look this shit up or you write it down and take a couple deaths. I don't have any complaints with this because in the landscape of the game, this shit ends up being fair. Then you have to fight Big Boss. Big Boss? But I thought he was our friend. No, he's an evil bastard who wastes your time. Big Boss is your guide throughout the game until you get to building 3. He calls you and then tells you to do shit that'll kill you. But why, you might ask? Firstly, to extend playtime, but I'll touch on that later. And secondly, because he's a double agent for Outer Heaven, our evil organization in this game. I won't lie, however annoying it is, by having your guide fuck you over to slowly reveal that he is the bad guy is about as inventive as he could be for the NES in 1987. This is a sick way to reveal it and a cool way to make one final boss after the perceived end goal of destroying Metal Gear. The issue with this boss fight is that you have to hit him with a fucking rocket launcher for some reason. And he's kind of a bitch to hit. I won't lie, I looked up the sweet spot for this shit after I died 3 times. And then you're done with the game after a ladder climb. And by doing the ending this way, the game creates a very memorable sequence and is probably why it was such a commercial success. And the truth is, that's all that mattered back in the day and has really been all that matters for most large companies. Whether it's brutal monetization systems that force you to pay to play a lot of content, or in more competitive focused games, forcing you to buy certain things to even have a chance against paying competitors. It makes shit not fun nowadays. Luckily for games as old as I'm talking about, DLC and in-game transactions didn't really exist unless you were paying to play at an arcade. For those cabinet games like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, which were massive commercial successes, difficulty made you money. The more times a player dies, the more they have to pay to keep going. And the game industry started drifting to the home like it has been for decades now. Keeping people playing was the name of the game. By keeping your player engaged for a long time, you're more likely to sell more copies by word of mouth. The only way to do this back in the day was to put bullshit in your game. Early Mario titles and shit like that one sewer level in Battletoads are famously extremely difficult for no good reason other than to drag out as much game as they could. We see it in Metal Gear through its backtracking, the doors, the codec calls, and the one-way elevators. It's all of it, but looking at it today, it's just not that fun to play, and not being fun sorta makes the game suck. For Metal Gear, there is no real difficulty, and there isn't really a place for it anyways. There isn't one section that's really hard and demands a lot from the player, but there are sections that are just bullshit and make you play through shit you went through 2 hours ago. All of its issues manifest within the final hour of the game. Big Boss being the evil mastermind is awesome, but by getting you killed, the game just wastes your time because you only get checkpoints in elevators. Shit like the doctor telling you he won't help you until you go save his daughter from the basement of the first building is just whack as fuck, and it forces you to play 30 more minutes for no reason. Why not put her in the same building or make her closer somehow? Or don't put her in a bogus ass gas section that you have to take damage in. This emphasis on extending playtime makes old games suck and is purely a design choice. If I go on Steam and randomly pick out a free Steam game, I guarantee that I'll have more fun in the same amount of hours than I did playing Metal Gear. Now, may games today have their own issues? Yes. Bugs, glitches, the shitty pay models I spoke of earlier are all things that plague modern big budget games, but at their core, they are more fun than any of these old ass games. But I still have hope for Metal Gear 2 to not be obnoxious. Unfortunately, I'm expecting much of the same nonsense the first one has, but once I get to Metal Gear Solid, I bet I'm going to enjoy it 10 times more than I would have without playing the bad ones first. Tune in to twitch.tv/ggmotalks. I stream often enough. That's where you'll catch all my Metal Gear playthroughs, and if you want a real-time reaction, that's where it'll be at. Drop a follow if you stop by. Everything is appreciated. Subscribe if you're not. 07.